If you're a frequent PNW Haunts and Homicides listener, you probably already know we're Birdie ambassadors.
We wanted to take a quick moment to tell you a little bit more about this awesome product.
Birdie is the modern personal safety alarm made for women by women.
In a situation where you feel threatened or unsafe, you can simply activate Birdie's loud siren and flashing light to create a diversion.
Birdie is perfect to carry anytime because the device is lightweight and comes in a variety of colors.
So important. Use our ambassador link and coupon code PNW Haunts and Homicides to receive 10% off your purchase. Like our social media handles, the coupon code is all spelled out, no special characters.
You can find the link and promo code in our show notes or PNW Haunts and Homicides link tree.
Have a safe ass day. As indie podcasters, we love to show our support of other awesome shows. So stay tuned for the promo we've got to share with you this week.
Let's show them some love. You can find their info in our show notes.
I'm Raven Rollins, and this is my Southern True Crime podcast where I discuss cases from my former hometown. Ada, Oklahoma paints itself as an average community, but its history of murder and corruption runs deeper than any story has ever told. You'll hear plenty of special guests, including authors and experts in their fields, who visit with me on each episode, as well as other cases in the southern states. With notorious and unknown cases alike, every victim sees the light on my show. This is Sirens, a true crime podcast.
You guys, we're back!
And don't worry, we did get more wine.
Well, of course. Hi, Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, creepy people.
Also, hi to me. Hi.
Hi, Kate. Walinga?
Yes.
Oh, nailed it.
You got it.
Beautiful.
We have Kate Walinga joining us today from Ignorance Was Bliss.
That's me. Hello.
That's you.
Hi.
Thank you for letting me come play.
Thanks for coming to play. We're very, very excited to have you. I would love it if you'll tell people a little bit about your show and a little bit about your incredibly interesting background.
Sure. I'm a forensic psychologist by trade. And so, have hung out with serial killers knowingly and on purpose. That's a thing that has happened. And forensic psychology is not as fun or sexy in the moment as people think it is. Because it's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of, like, if you've ever done jury duty or anything to do with the court system, you understand that it's hurry up and wait. And I did a lot of that. And it's a lot of writing and it's a lot of whatever, but it's also talking to people. And I loved it. It was where my heart was. And then in 2014, I broke my back. Terrible idea. Don't do that.
Not recommended.
No,
0 out of 10.
0 stars. Absolutely. And so I spent about 4 years moping. Like, when I set my mind to something, I do it. You know what I'm saying? And so I decided I was going to feel sorry for myself. And I did it in all caps for 4 years. And I have 4 children.
Oh.
And I've been married for 1,000 years, and my father moved in with us, and I reached a point where I was like, I don't have a life of my own anymore. Like, as soon as, it's daylight, as soon as somebody crosses the threshold of my bedroom door, I'm fair game for people. And so on New Year's Day of 2018, I went up to my husband, and depending on who is telling the story, I either gently tapped him on the shoulder, or I grabbed him by the shirt collar and pulled him in real close and said, I'm going to start a podcast. And being a smart man, his answer was, okay.
Yes, dear.
Do you need anything from me? And I'm like, I need you to leave me alone. Because I needed a hobby that made me feel relevant and smart and competent again, and also forced them to not talk to me for a while. Like, that was really important. And so initially it was going to be a like true crime adjacent deal. I was going to explain to people what forensic psychology was and what it wasn't. I figured 20 episodes and I'd be done. I have recently released, I think it was episode 458.
Wow.
Been doing
Congratulations.
it for a little while.
It's been 5 years now, 1 million downloads. So it seems like it's doing pretty well, you know. And after about maybe 6 months or a year, I decided for various reasons that I didn't only want to do true crime.
Sure, that's fair.
Both because I sort of the first crossover I ever did with somebody was not planned. I was literally sitting on my couch texting with somebody, and she was like, why don't we go record right now?
Ooh.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. And the first couple of my episodes are very scripted, narrative, and crimey and focused. And that's not me. Like, none of that is me. I'm not very focused or narrative or controlled. And after each of those first early episodes, I was tired when I was done. And after this first collaboration, I was pumped up. I was like, this is fun. And so I started talking to other true crime creators. And then from there, it branched out to, you know what? I don't want to only do crime. I want to talk to other podcasters I admire, which then became authors and actors and kind of anybody. Like, I tell people I'm a pod slut. Like, I'll talk to anybody.
It's fun to talk to all different kinds of people, different
that's what
varieties.
And so I walk in with it every time. Like, I don't know what we're going to talk about, because I feel like if I can help somebody understand what it is like to be a podcaster or a parent or to have anxiety, or like one guy that's been on my show more than once is calling me from a contraband cell phone in a maximum security prison in Mississippi. And he talks about the murder he committed, and he talks about what he's doing behind bars now. And I feel like if I can make any of that understandable, it's not that much bigger of a leap for you to understand how violent crimes or serial murder happens. And so there are times that I forget that, like, normal people don't know about this stuff. So I feel like my job is to make normal people think.
I love that.
Especially if I can make them a little bit uncomfortable at the time. You know?
Right?
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a little bit, on a very different, I would say scale maybe is a good way to describe it. I mean, that's a little bit of what we do, at least with each other.
Make each other uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when we started our show, I wanted to cover true crime, and for Cassie, it was absolutely non-negotiable that she wouldn't cover true crime, and she would absolutely cover the paranormal. And we basically cover each other's no-no topics.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we're very excited to have you with us today. And Cassie's probably going to be really mad at me. But I'd like to think that I came through with a case that is a little bit unique. And unfortunately for her, it is quite dark.
It's fine. I'm here.
You didn't need to sleep tonight, right? Like,
right,
that wasn't a thing. Okay.
No.
Overrated.
All right, I'm just going to get into it.
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
I know, it's not going to get any easier. I'm sorry. Today, we're going to talk about Lani Kai, who was born Lorenzo Ogaruru on the Mariana Islands. She was born biologically male, but knew from a very young age that she was not a boy. On August 26th of 2001, when her untimely and brutal passing occurred, her legal name was still technically her dead name. Sadly, I do think the same can probably be said for a lot of victims of violence in this particular corner of the alphabet mafia. It's a marginalized community, and I think a lot of times some of those things are maybe not as formal, and that just kind of breaks my heart a little bit, knowing how the rest of this story goes.
Aw.
I know. But let's talk a little bit more about Lonnie's background. Before we get into this too deeply, and I break Cassie's heart, because she seemed to be a remarkable individual by the assessment of basically everyone around her. As I mentioned, Lonnie was born on an island. Specifically, she was born on Saipan, which is part of the Northern Mariana Islands, and that's a commonwealth of the United States. I was like, I need to know a little bit more about this. I don't really know anything about the Mariana Islands. So
I was going to say, I don't even know where they're at.
I know about
Yeah.
the trench, right? Like that's
Yeah, exactly. So it's in the Western Pacific Ocean, according to Britannica. So thank you for being such a good source.
Oh.
I think digging in as much as possible to the background of someone like Lonnie really helps to inform us of her struggles, and it gives her memory greater depth. All that being said, while living in Saipan, Lonnie embraced her true identity in life. Those closest to her, and I found this a little bit surprising, but in fact, everyone around her were quite accepting. Greg Miles, who was her uncle, was quoted by the Southern Poverty Law Center intelligence report following her murder. He said that there was an open-mindedness towards gender identity surrounding Lonnie and her community that was actually quite common in many of the South Pacific Islands. And I was just like, thank Christ, like I love that. Fucking love
Yeah.
that for you, Lonnie.
and it's just a thing, it's just a
Yeah.
okay, they don't care.
Yeah.
It's not don't care in a so shut up way. It's a I don't care, go ahead and live your life. You
Right.
do you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's very like free flowing, and we just accept people as they are. And it's like, you're not doing any harm to anyone, and we just don't take issue with it. And I'm just like, wow, I wonder what that's
Refreshing.
like.
Yeah.
Weird concept.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm moving.
Right.
Are we?
She's like, well, I'm going to follow you. So where are we going? Culturally, it seems that it is understood that some individuals are born in the wrong body. Again, just wild. Where do we got to go to get some of that? Oh, the South Pacific. According to him, this never presented an issue for Lonnie's family either. Greg said that many of the children in the extended family referred to Lonnie as Auntie,
Oh.
which really warms my heart. I'm just like, it's so precious. And Auntie is like definitely culturally, certainly not exclusive to the South Pacific, but that's a term of endearment for a beloved relative, and, implies a female gender identity. And I just thought that was really sweet.
That is sweet.
And I mention it really just because I think that all too often, people that find themselves in Lonnie's shoes don't have such a tremendously supportive village surrounding them. In 1997, Lonnie moved from the Mariana Islands to the mainland of the United States. She spent time in Seattle and Pullman in Washington State before moving on to Eugene, eventually settling into an area just outside of Portland, Oregon, known as Aloha.
Okay.
Just an aside, but whenever we hear people talking about Aloha, they're always referring to it as Aloha. And I thought, I heard a couple of different news stories and like even other podcasts where they were talking about, that's where she was living at the time. And I was like, oh, you guys are talking about Lonnie. I'm going to forgive you, but aloha.
I know. I mean, it's spelled just like aloha, but
I know. It is.
locals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the town I'm in Salem, Massachusetts, and the town next to us is spelled Peabody, right?
Yeah.
And everybody
Peabody?
pronounces it, like Rocky and Bullwinkle, Mr. Peabody. It's Peabody.
Peabody. Oh, that's
Peabody.
cute.
The Peabody Essex Museum is here. The kids go to Peabody. Peabody's right over the border. Like you can't. Like I've lived here long enough that I can't not say it that way. And so now when I hear Rocky and Bullwinkle, I'm like, what are they saying? Is that,
What is that?
but nobody looks it up. And so this is big in the news at the moment because of the Anna Walsh case
Mhm.
and some of her effects. So not
Yeah.
remains, but some of
Yeah.
the items were retrieved from the Peabody transfer station. And I can tell right away when I hear a podcast or a newscast start talking about it, and I'm like, oh, here it comes.
Here
Here
it
it comes. All you have to do is listen to a local newscast first. 5 seconds. Go for it. Give it a try. No, it's Peabody. Okay, that's where it is.
That's a tough one too, because like you look at it and you're like, yeah, I can say that. It's
Sure,
easy.
aloha, Peabody.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't aware that that's how, and now I'm like, I'm going to be doing the same thing every time I hear any of the updates and Peabody.
It's Peabody. It's Peabody.
Peabody. Yeah, I figured somehow you live in Massachusetts, that was going to come up. And Cassie might be really mad at me for this case, but she's not going to be mad at me for long because she's going to be super excited to talk to you about your house in Salem, Massachusetts.
Yes,
Oh, is it haunted?
indeed.
Oh, are you coming back on the show? Are you talking about it today? When are we doing this? I'm
This
excited.
is either both,
She's like, it's your show, so you tell me. Yeah.
I guess we should let Caitlin finish first.
I guess. I mean,
So, Aloha, not Aloha. It's about 10 miles west of the city of Portland. This part of town has actually been developing really rapidly in the last 2 decades in particular. But I would say in, the early 2000s, 2001 specifically, you can kind of think of this as sort of a bedroom community. Certainly less so these days than it was back then. Dating back to 2001, I think it was definitely considered a relatively safe and a pretty quiet suburban area.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
I think so.
I haven't given you much more than just Aloha, but you're going to be able to triangulate this real quick. She's so
Okay.
uncomfortable.
Well, I just remember being like, middle school age then, and we just walked around the town. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything creepy that happened that I'm aware of anyway.
Well, there were definitely some things.
I'm sure.
Yeah, there were definitely some things. But it's the type of area where a lot of times, up until probably we were about high school age, at a certain point then, you start driving, but it was very normal to just see kids walking like, a mile, 2 miles to the nearest, from one campus to another, or walk into the grocery store. Everybody hangs out in the deli department at Fred Meyer's.
Oh, yeah. I was never invited.
You just got to show up.
neither was I. It's okay.
It's a bit of a walk for you.
It's a long walk.
Yeah. But there in Aloha, Lonnie worked as an assembly and quality control specialist for a short time, which sounds like a job I could absolutely not do at all. Cassie, back me up here.
I just think of Elf when he's testing out the Jack in the Box thing.
Yeah.
I
I mean, it might as well be that. I don't know. That just sounds like a job I'm not equipped for. coworkers recalled that she was a mild-mannered and incredibly warm person. So if you were hoping that it would be less heartbreaking because she was secretly a dick, I have bad news on that front. Martin, who was her cousin's husband, said she was quite gifted at making others laugh when they were feeling down. Now, Lonnie was temporarily unemployed in August of 2001. She lived in Hillsborough, actually a small section of neighborhood that locals know as Reedville, with some of her extended family at the time along Southwest Cornelius Pass Road. Now, everybody pause, and I realize that I'm the only one, along with Kate, that can see Cassie's face, but just we're going to pause for reaction.
I mean, I know exactly where it's at.
Yeah. Her discomfort is growing. Just for
Anyone
context.
who lives here is highly uncomfortable right now.
Yeah. On Saturday, August 25th, Lonnie left home just before midnight wearing a pair of designer, and you guys, legend, acid wash jeans.
Oh, yeah.
And a gray sweatshirt, white sneakers, with her fingernails painted green.
Aw.
I know. Hashtag goals. She was 5'9" and about 130 pounds, which I am 5 foot, and I don't think I could say that today. So weight is just a number.
5'9" tall.
Yes. Yeah. Her long hair was naturally dark, but was tinted red at the time. It actually was really pretty.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. The weather at this time of year is fairly warm, but can actually cool down fairly significantly in the evening hours. So it's not unusual for someone to be wearing shorts or other summery attire during the day and then change into jeans to go out for a late dinner or for a movie or whatever. So I don't know what Lonnie had worn earlier in the day, but I just felt like I wanted to add that for context because at the end of August, in a lot of places, you would not be caught dead in like a sweatshirt and jeans. So it's a lot cooler here if you haven't visited.
Yeah.
On a weekend evening like this, Lonnie usually frequented bars along Southwest Tualatin Valley Highway, or TV Highway as it's known in the area.
I was like,
Right,
what's that?
Cassie?
I don't even know what that is. It's too long.
Tualatin.
Yeah, the GPS can never say it right either.
Yeah, that's a tough one to. And then if you have to spell it out for somebody on customer service, like calls or something. It's unclear what her exact plans were on this evening or precisely where she was the entire evening, but we do have some information about her whereabouts on this, of course, the evening in question. She was spotted at the Golden Fountain Lounge on Southwest Canyon Road in Beaverton at one point, though reportedly she didn't stay long. It's kind of unclear exactly how long she was there, which is interesting because I do think we have a pretty clear timeline of other little sections, little chunks of her whereabouts for that evening. So struck me as odd, but I'm not exactly sure why that is. You know, maybe she just falls off CCTV footage and they lose her for a little bit. I'm not sure. I know. I don't like it. She walked along TV Highway in the direction of Murray Boulevard, headed towards a 7-Eleven near the intersection, which I can actually picture this 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm. There's been a little road work done in that area, so it might look a little different, but
yeah. Yeah, I think in general, it's like I can very clearly picture it, and it's just really eerie how much of this case I'm able to clearly visualize. It's inside that 7-Eleven, she is seen on surveillance cameras having a conversation with another woman at 2:10 a.m. So at this point, it's probably been about 2 hours since she's left home. It's not a huge chunk of time, especially considering that's like not exactly a short walk from down, you know, that end of Canyon Road all the way up. Lonnie apparently visited this 7-Eleven often. So this wasn't really unusual. It's just kind of more a part of the timeline. At approximately 3:30 a.m. near TV Highway and 141st Avenue, she flagged down 2 police officers that were driving by. Normally, this might be where you'd suspect that this is where things began to go wrong. I feel like a lot of cases we've talked about, that's kind of where things go sideways.
Yeah.
We're certainly hearing about it in the news, but not so. She had, however, flagged them down, and it was simply to ask them for a ride.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait. So she flags down police officers for a ride, and somehow she still ends up not surviving. This is obviously the night that she's killed. How does that happen?
Oh my goodness. Did they give her a ride?
They did not.
I was going to say, how? Why not?
Well,
they just won't. Cops won't.
yeah, and I understand that that tends to be a common practice. In this case, it's kind of it's like, God damn it. It's just a shit situation the way that
if
this
only
played
they
out.
had. Often, there's a lot of
Mhm.
times where people
Yeah.
who end up victims of any sort of crime have had interactions with cops. And if cops perhaps focused on community support rather than perceived power and enforcement and, keeping people alive rather than not, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this particular case, there was just a literal misunderstanding, and the nature of it. And Cassie, you're going to be able to tell right away because the language barrier,
Oh.
there's some confusion there. And I'll get through this next part and you'll understand. I'm just like, this just kills me. It absolutely kills me. So Officer Brandon Herring had difficulty understanding some of the conversation, apparently because of Lonnie's accent. They believed that Lonnie wished to be driven all the way to the nearby town of Cornelius,
Oh.
rather than literally just right down the road on Cornelius Pass Road. So they thought, okay, well, we're going to offer to call a cab, or we can call a friend or a relative for you, because they just were not going to be able to take her the roughly 10 miles northwest of where she had flagged them down. It's a little bit longer, and it's outside of the area that they should be patrolling. And I'm like, God damn it.
I mean, but realistically, like in most jurisdictions,
Yeah,
police won't give you a ride 10 feet down the road.
it's
Like,
true. That is true.
And there are certain justifications for that,
Yeah.
which
We have feelings about.
I've worked close. I've worked in the criminal justice system. I've worked closely with cops, and I understand that they are hampered by rules.
Yeah.
So maybe that's changed the rules, but we're
Yeah.
looking at 21 years ago, and so 22 years ago almost. So
Yeah.
okay, all right. Things were real different back
I would
then.
think, yeah. And Lonnie just didn't want to spend money on a cab. And then, of course, it's 3:30 in the morning and she doesn't want them to call somebody and, wake them up at that early morning hour. She's like, I don't want to disturb anyone else at this time of the morning,
Oh.
which, very sweet that she didn't want to do that. But at the same time, I'm sure that nearly anyone in her life would be happy to come and pick her up to make sure that she made it home safely. So that's one of those tough ones where, you feel a little bit heartbroken for what could have been, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm sure everyone that she knew would agree that they would go pick her up. Sounded like she was very beloved.
Yeah. if they had realized that she was referring to Cornelius Pass Road, that was a very short drive from where they stood. And I'm guessing that that night would have ended very differently. It sounds like specifically just the length of the drive that they assumed she wanted them to take her was kind of the deal breaker. I mean, for those of you that aren't locals, right around this stretch of road is where Hillsboro and Beaverton roughly meet. Just a handful of years ago, I worked at a business that was situated just a couple of blocks down from this very corner. And Cornelius is a bit of a trek. I mean, it's a minimum of 10 miles. And sadly, it's the last known location where Lonnie was seen alive.
Oh.
It's like, it's a tough one because I'm like, it's not that they necessarily did anything wrong, but it's like they don't always have the best tools to deal with this stuff. It's just like, fuck, it sucks.
Yeah.
It fucking sucks. And they probably feel fucking terrible.
I hope so, frankly, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's not vitriol against cops. I hope that you have the humanity within you to feel bad.
Yeah.
I
would,
I feel bad when, if I learn sometimes that like, oh, I just missed an accident.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
if I see an accident happen or something, and I feel bad, like, oh, I wish I could have. I'm sort of geared to help, probably when I shouldn't at times. But there's times where it's like there's nothing I can do. It's on the other side of the highway, or I learned that the accident happened right after I went by, or whatever. Where it's like, oh, I wish I could have, And so it's just that those
absolutely,
it's those near misses that are the worst.
Yeah, I have chills right now.
Oh.
There's no way that either of you guys could have known this, but we literally just had that experience last night.
Oh.
It was on the other side of the freeway because we saw a police vehicle come up behind us, and holy shit, were they hauling ass. And the cop finally got to a point where he stopped, and he's on the left-hand side of the freeway, and a very major freeway, and he gets out and he hopped the median. And I couldn't really clearly see what had happened on the other side, but I'm like, oh man, it's like that. You just feel for whoever, like, he's rushing to try to help. Oh, just had a feeling of dread after that.
Well, you're so sensitive too. You probably picked up on someone's energy while you were passing by.
Something for sure.
You sponge.
I mean, I even feel bad when there is an accident and it seems contained. And so I've
you feel
driven
guilty
out there.
passing by, though, right?
I don't feel guilty about anything ever. Guilt is not a thing I do. But I wish I could help in some way. But like, so I have driven out there. I've been in Hillsboro and Beaverton and in areas nearby. I don't have permission to use their name, but a close friend of mine lives in Hillsboro, and so I've spent some time there.
Get out of here.
So you know where we're talking about.
I do. I think.
Okay.
I mean, and there's a pho restaurant that's amazing. That's right down that area. Right. I don't.
What type of restaurant? I didn't.
It's called Pho King.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's
so
really
good.
Popular.
It's really good. It should be. And so anyway, but out here, so I mean, Route 90 comes all the way out here as well. And so we have the same kind of thing. And I feel bad when the accident seems like it's contained and, it backs up traffic for some space, quarter mile, whatever. And then there's this span where the cars stopped by the accident are just stuck.
Yeah.
And you get past the next exit and you see other cars coming and they don't know.
Oh, I know.
And
God.
I just wish I had some sort of like,
how could I warn them
or something like, pull off now, go use the bathroom, get a drink for the love of God. Like, you're going to have a terrible time. Just go around, but there's nothing you can do. So,
yeah. No, that's true. It's a kind of a helpless feeling. It's awful. On Sunday, August 26th, Her body was discovered in what was described as an overgrown field by a teenage girl who was out jogging.
Oh, no.
This is why you don't jog.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, it's one of many reasons not to jog. I would argue I could produce a list, as long as I am tall, which isn't saying much, but, it's a lot of reasons.
But yeah, that's that poor kid.
I know. She was like 16 years old. Who is going out this early in the morning on a Sunday to jog? A teenager? Give me
She
a
on
break.
the track team.
I must have been. It's the only explanation.
Oh,
Lonnie's body was left there following the horrific attack that took her life. For context, this is about 4 miles south of Hillsborough on a stretch of Southwest Farmington Road that remains to this day actually fairly rural still. Almost a farmland type area near Rood Bridge Road.
gotcha. That's like right by the high school too, right? Or is that a little
It
bit
is.
further away?
No, it's very close. It's, for Hillsborough kids, it's basically walking distance to the high school from there.
Yeesh.
Yeah. Her body was left hidden just beyond the tree line. Lonnie was beaten really severely. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and face, likely inflicted with a blunt instrument of some kind. They suspect maybe a jack or a tire iron, which is just horrific because it's kind of a weapon of opportunity, I would think. This was another topic that her uncle, Greg Miles, spoke to the intelligence report about, stating that some of her fingertips had been cut off
What?
and that her face had been virtually smashed in.
Were they trying to like hide the identity or something?
It seems like that might have, he definitely felt like it was a crime that had definitely been committed in a rage. And there definitely was sort of some speculation that the removal of some of Lonnie's fingertips by her killer could have been either an expression of rage, but also some suspected it may have also been an effort to thwart her identification.
Yeah, but if you just remove some of them, I guess that doesn't really make sense. I don't know. Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, not really sure what to make of that.
Was there a sexual element to it?
There was not.
So
And that was something.
That's what I wonder is, did they because there couldn't be a sexual element to crime without sex happening.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in which case you may opt not to get involved with the genitalia in any way, the genital region, the chest region, you may opt not to do that. But if it's rage, if it was, I thought I was picking a girl up, and, oh, this isn't a girl, with that kind of attitude. And now what do you attack to remove someone's identity if you're going to leave the genitalia intact? Then maybe it wasn't so much the fingerprints as the fingernails.
And, that's an interesting point because I thought, with the painted nails, that doesn't seem like much of a stretch, but it is kind of odd because, again, it's not necessarily all of the fingertips, but to me, that kind of makes sense.
It feels like, removing aspects of somebody's identity, including removing aspects of someone's femininity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think, if nothing else, this really comes down to a level of sort of devaluing someone. And it's, what I would think of as desecration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
How old was she?
28.
So she's a little bit older than I am then. And because I was 24, I turned 24 in 2001. And
Right.
that's a time where we still used words like transvestite and crossdresser.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was no longer a pejorative. Like it wasn't name calling as much. So it was like, it was sort of on the scene, but the
Mhm.
idea of being fully transgender was not something that was super common. And it was still diagnosable as a mental illness.
Oh, was
God.
it?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, my goodness.
So I graduated with my doctorate in 2005, and a classmate of mine did her dissertation on gender identity disorder, as it was called then.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, to her credit, it was
Yeah.
about how, hey, let's not call this a disorder.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
She's like, maybe we
Okay.
don't.
She's like, maybe we could not, and it is no longer, since then,
Sure.
the manual with which we diagnose people has been updated, and that's been taken out. But it was pretty heavily pathologized. And out in Massachusetts, I worked in a locked state psychiatric hospital, which is sort of long-term stay sort of
Mhm.
things. And one of my patients, whom I can't name, but she was the first person in Massachusetts, to my knowledge, who had spent time incarcerated in both men and women's facilities.
Oh, wow.
Because she
That's
was
really interesting.
Yeah.
assigned male at birth. And so after the first crimes that she committed, she was sort of automatically placed in a men's prison. And to their credit, first of all, sexual assault is not as common in prison as people think it is. But secondly, to their credit, they did acknowledge her safety risks and keep her in solitary. But the flip side to solitary is it's
That's-
solitary.
Right.
hard.
Exactly.
You
The toll
know,
that
so,
that takes on someone's mental health.
It's sort of a, do you want to go crazy or do you want to die? Like those are sort of
Right.
the choices that you're given. This is
Aw.
not an entirely great set of choices. But so the second time, or a subsequent time, I can't say second time, but a subsequent time that she was arrested, she was placed in a women's facility. And that was considered at the time. So this would have been 2003, 2004. It was before I graduated. I was doing an internship, and at the time it was considered pretty progressive to
Yeah.
Yeah.
to place it, like, sit with me for a second, to place a woman in a woman's prison. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But she
Weird.
also then ended up in the psychiatric hospital because life had not been kind to her. So she had some
I mean-
legitimate mental illnesses, as that
In
had nothing
addition
to do with
to.
gender.
Yeah.
And then it was just a matter of, like, so the hospitals are mixed gender here,
Mhm.
and they try to put, usually it's 2 people per room, same sex. But-
Sure.
They will try to put people in solo rooms if there's any sort of risk of either acting out or being acted out upon. And so she had a solo room.
And I
Aw.
think it's a tough situation because, of course, a lot of those facilities, if you're nearing capacity or already at or over capacity, some of those things, it can be so difficult to accommodate and make sure that it has to be, it just has to be.
Mhm.
Oh, God. Oh, back to the fingers.
Back to the fingers.
Okay.
But obviously it didn't pan out. If they were trying to thwart identification, that was not going to work. But obviously it's just a very brutal act. Regardless of why you're doing that, that is just an act of brutality against another human that I would hope that none of us can understand. In a million years.
Except maybe the psychologist.
understand maybe has dual meanings.
Based on what we know
Yeah.
is different. Right, sure. Well, and based on what we know, but that's part of why my job would often be to sit down and ask somebody.
Mhm.
Like I've had conversations that involve things like, literally, why did you try and remove the fingertips? Like, and you have to ask those questions with a fairly straight face.
Right.
And act like I am not saying the words that I am about to say. But I'm going to ask you, how many times did you hit her with the tire iron? Like, and you have to sort of check your own morality at the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to enter into your world. And I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to do my best to understand. And now the trick is you do your best to understand the person, but then you pick your own morality back up as you leave the room again.
Of course.
And you get back into your own head, because I know it's possible. I've watched colleagues break because it starts to make too much sense to them.
Right.
Oh.
I mean, it's breaking down who they are.
And that's the thing, is you have to sort of consciously, I'm going to check my logic and check my rationality at the door, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to enter your world. But then when we leave, your world stays here and I'm going home.
Yeah. Goodbye forever.
Well, until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's what I say every time I leave here. Goodbye forever.
Just in
Until
case.
next week. You know what? I mean, that side of things, I think, is so interesting, and really thinking about how you approach those things. And my partner does interrogation as part of his career field, and I have learned a lot from him in that regard. I know that I don't ever want to play poker for money with either of you. Not a chance in hell. Not a snowflake's chance in hell. I don't stand a chance. I'm just like way too transparent, and I'm an oversharer. I can't help myself. This is one that I'm curious what you make of this. Oddly, it was said that Lonnie didn't have broken fingernails. So it didn't seem like she had much of an opportunity to put up a fight. So it's a little bit unclear, and without actually pulling up necessarily like a autopsy report. And to be honest, as much as the details of it are so interesting for many of us, that are interested in true crime, and, we care about these cases for menagerie of reasons. I was like, I just don't know if I have it in me to get into the nitty gritty of like fingertip. Can you quantify that for me? But I'm curious from your perspective, if somebody has removed part of the fingertip or the entirety of a fingertip, but not on every finger. So God, this is terrible. For argument's sake.
It's probably done post-mortem, would be my guess.
Well, I mean, I would think so.
And that if somebody's coming at you with a tire iron, and it's funny that it's a tire iron. It's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's funny about this. But go with me for a
not
second. It's
humorous, not funny,
haha. So on December 26th, 2022, which happens to be my husband's birthday, and which we don't celebrate in December because the 26th is a crappy time to have a birthday, frankly.
It's a rough time.
But still, we had dinner, we had cupcakes, that was great. And I was about to head upstairs to go to bed. It's in the evening. And by the way, I am deaf. Mostly I hear about 25% of what normal people hear. And so I'm just sort of doing my thing and good night, heading upstairs. And my husband stops me. He's like, "Can you hear that?" And I'm like, "That's
what
funny,
do you think?"
What do you say? And he's like, he said, "I think someone just hit the house," which you have to understand. My house is, it's away from the street a little bit, but it's up on a little hill. So nobody's going to hit the house Willem, like, what do you... But I'm like, I don't know. But I as I said before, like, I'm geared toward, like, getting involved and stepping in. And so I just walked out on my front porch and he's like, what are you doing? You know, but I'm like, if you think something's going on, and what's going on is across the street, one over, there's a house that we had been referring to as the meth house, which,
Oh.
you know, Salem's not a super methy place, like
Yeah.
in general, but this one house has had a lot of turnover in the past year. And so we started referring to it as the meth house, although it turns out we were probably accurate this
Oh,
time.
gosh.
And so this young gentleman is screaming. He's standing outside and he's screaming at the occupants of the house. And he's holding a tire iron.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, and I just, my question, which often will de-escalate things, one would hope, you know, you don't do the, hey, what's going on, that kind of thing, because that can be kind of aggressive. Instead, I was like, hey,
Sure.
are you safe?
Oh.
Are you safe? You know, is there something that I can help you with right now? Are you safe? And he did calm down for a second. He sort of lowered the weapon and he started sort of ranting to me about they have my stuff in the house, and I was like, okay, I can't, like, you can't come in my house, and I don't, like, are you safe? Do you need me to call anybody? That's what I can do for you right now, is do you need me to call anything? And he was like, no, I'll just get it myself. And he turns around and he bolts up their front steps with the tire iron and breaks the plate glass window.
Oh, my gosh.
That was pretty much my reaction. And so through the process of this, as soon as he turns around and says, no, I'm going to get it myself, I get on the phone and I'm calling 911. So I'm the caller on 911 while he's breaking the glass.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I can tell you that a tire iron is suddenly a lot longer of an instrument with, the thing about it is that it's narrow and,
Right.
you know, especially if you're sort of holding the hook end and swinging with the other one, it'd be easy to hit somebody and kill them. You know, you knock them out
Before
with
they
one or
can
two
really
blows to the
react.
head, and they're not, you know, it's done. It's not like with a physical assault or like a baseball bat or something. You get your hands up and now the fingernails can break.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know, a tire iron, you can hit somebody and kind of skip the hand part altogether, you know, and just go directly to the, you know, the tire iron is connected to the head bone. I think that's how the song goes, right? Like that's how it goes. And like the removal of fingertips or the removal of any body part at all generally is not something that is done on a living victim. Once in a great while. Sylvia Likens is an example of a torture case that where she lived for an extended amount of time with various tortures to her body. But by and large, that kind of disfigurement and dehumanization happens after the death. Not and frankly, I hope.
I mean, yeah, I think we all do.
You know, and so, because, like, look, after I'm dead, I don't care.
Right.
Like, anymore. Like, I reserve the right to haunt your dreams and your
Absolutely.
your home if I have to. But that, you know, once you're beyond feeling.
Of course.
Usually that's when, you know, it's sort of a panicked, sloppy cleanup kind of mindset to do those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if you're going to get into it. Were the fingers tips there or did they take them?
You know, that's another, I'm not sure. It's unclear. It does sound like she was killed in one place and her body was discovered in another.
Right. That would make sense. Okay.
The thing that it's like, and it's, I feel like this is probably just to be able to convey the question that I have about the fingertips, like in light of the full picture of the forensic evidence, at least that without doing a FOIA request of some sort that, I have, it's almost like the way I would have to word it, it's like it's too graphic, and I don't want to sensationalize in that way with this case, but I'm very curious about, in the instance where they've removed maybe some of the fingertips, and I'm thinking it's so hard not knowing exactly like how much of the fingertip did they actually, like you were saying, they cut off the entire finger, up to kind of that first knuckle, basically, and they've taken the nails. Like, what's the purpose otherwise? Like, I mean, it's not thwarting the identification unless you take all of them. So, I mean, is that just about mutilation? Like,
I mean, it could be as simple as, oh shit, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. I quit.
yeah.
Oh.
Like that happens a lot where people they commit a crime. They think I'm going to obliterate this person's identity and get away.
Mhm.
And usually that's an indication that there's a connection between victim and perpetrator, because otherwise, why do you care?
Right.
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 Like, I don't care if I've killed a stranger. I don't care if you figure out who they are because there's no connection between us. But if I kill somebody I know, I've got, Anna Walsh case, right? Like there's
Mhm.
motivation to try and obscure the identity and the location because there's a clear connection between Anna Walsh and Brian Walsh as a parallel. And so that would make me wonder, like, why do you need to remove this person's identity? Are they a stand-in for somebody in your life?
Right.
That's a possibility. And now you're mad at them for not actually being that stand-in? Or do you know them and you're trying to make sure that you have time to get away? And the thing about that is that sometimes people, in the process of trying to hide their crime, trying to like look, I don't want to say this in a positive way, but I don't know how else to say it, is that dismemberment is work.
I mean, but it is though.
Do you know, like, it's
Yeah.
work and it takes time. And if you're saying that she was last seen alive at 3:30 approximately in the morning,
Yeah, 3:30 a.m.
and then was found at 6 a.m.,
Around that time, I think.
that's not a ton of time. It takes
No.
time to pick someone up. It takes time to beat them to death.
Mhm.
It takes time to try and obscure their identity. Then it takes time to move the body. And sun is starting to come up. You're starting to really panic because you definitely don't want to be seen in daylight. You don't want your car to be seen. And so you quit and bolt.
That makes a lot of sense. For me, it's just been really bothersome because it's like, this feels very incomplete. And I think maybe that's particularly for someone who's, I mean, I'm very interested in this, but I'm obviously not an expert. And just coming from a layman's perspective, you do kind of think like, well, they're going to do it this way or they're going to do that. And it's like, well, they probably thought they were going to do it this way or, whatever. But the reality of it. And so, I mean, it's just an interesting thing to keep in mind, that it's like the reality of the situation is that it takes time. I mean, thank God it does. Thank God.
Right, for real. And
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, I am unabashedly against gun ownership because guns don't take time.
Nope.
Right.
You can wreak incredible havoc really fast with that. And other methods, you can kill people with all kinds of things, but they take longer. Another thing that I was just thinking of is if she was transported from one place to another, I would need to know, like, were the fingertips cut cleanly, or were they
Mhm.
maybe broken off by slamming them in the trunk?
And that's a great, I mean, it's one of those things where I almost am like,
Again, honestly hope that, because
right.
the more extreme the behavior, whether the victim is still alive or post-mortem,
Mm-hmm.
the more extreme the behavior is, such as removing body parts, it implies a really disordered mind. And
Right.
that's scary.
It is scary. Oh, God.
Oh, man.
I mean, we graduated in 2007 from a high school that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's not actual walking distance from this spot. But I remember, I mean, really vaguely, but I remember hearing about this case.
So did they ever find the perpetrator?
What do you think?
It's not sounding good.
No, I wish. I mean, it's one of those cases because, especially like you say, some of these details really inform us as far as like, wow, this is someone that we should be extremely fearful of. Like, as a community, we should be very invested in finding this perpetrator. Like, that's horrifying. Still, there was little evidence available at the scene. What that told investigators at the time was that she had been murdered elsewhere and her body was only disposed of afterward where it had been found. Her time of death was estimated to be somewhere between the hours of 3:30 and 5 a.m. This window leaves just about a 90-minute period after she interacted with the police officers on TV Highway, during which she was brutally attacked and murdered. Her body was moved. I mean, all of the things that you mentioned. It's the location where her body was found was approximately 9 miles away from where the police had encountered her. This also gave them another very important piece of the puzzle, because there was literally no way that she could have traveled that far on foot in that time. She just couldn't. I mean, maybe an Olympic sprinter. I doubt it. No.
Well, she wasn't headed that direction, was she?
No.
That wasn't her goal to get over in that area.
No. I mean, this is all like such a, if you
I'm
think
trying to,
about
like,
it, like a
think about
small
it, but-
circle of geographic locations. But no, I mean, it's not really, it's certainly way overshooting where she lived at the time. Sexual assault and robbery were both ruled unlikely motives fairly early on. The medical examiner did not produce any findings indicating that there were signs of recent sexual activity. There was also still cash on her person when the body was discovered. Sadly, this final fatal act was not the only instance in which Lonnie had encountered violence or bigotry. She had actually endured 2 other assaults since moving to the Portland area, neither of which were reported to law enforcement. Her family stated that she just honestly didn't believe anything would or could be done.
Oh.
Washington County Sheriff's Detective Mike O'Connell has long speculated that her gender identity may have played a role in her death, as it had with another previous, to put it extremely mildly, a bad date encounter. She'd been forced out of her date's vehicle after he realized her biological or anatomical gender. This is literally exactly what you mentioned, this exact example, Kate. And in any case, official statements released by law enforcement authorities indicate that they believe this to be the case, that she was specifically targeted because of her gender identity. So, kind of makes me lean towards that the fingers were, you know, like you said, more than likely post-mortem, but that they were taken intentionally. I don't have a lot to go on in a case where there's not an instance of sexual assault. And I'm like, I don't know what else they would be basing that on, but seems reasonable, I think.
Were they just basing it off of her past encounters?
I mean, and that I suppose could be.
Or maybe they know something else that
Well, and
didn't get put out.
yeah, of course, we know that in so many cases that happens. They have to hold certain details back because only one person's going to know those details. But because obviously this was all probably starting to appear that it might shape up nice and neat somehow, now I have bad news. So Lonnie's case would sadly take a backseat to other world news as world events rapidly changed the landscape, not only for Americans, but in some sense, kind of for people all over the world. A public rally to raise awareness of the crime committed by Lonnie's killer was scheduled to take place a few weeks following her murder. The notice was published in the AM edition of newspapers on Tuesday, September 11th of 2001.
Shit.
Yeah. Her memorial service was held in October before the crime would end up fading into relative obscurity. Basic Rights Oregon and other LGBTQ organizations have made efforts to keep Lonnie's story alive in the hopes that the pursuit of justice would not prove fruitless. Roe Thorpe, the executive director of Basic Rights Oregon, said in 2002 that prejudice against the trans population dehumanizes. In 2003, Basic Rights Oregon introduced SB 1000 to the Oregon State Senate, hoping to add gender identity under hate crime laws, specifically citing Lonnie's case, with the further hope of possibly getting the case additional coverage and or funding through local police or, I mean, hell, maybe if they could swing it, even the FBI. The bill was killed in committee by Karen Manass. I know you're shocked. She's a Republican. Just, the party that callously disregards and blatantly victimizes minorities. It's fine. In 2005, she would also oppose civil unions for same-sex couples because it's not enough to allow them to be beaten or murdered, but they shouldn't be allowed to have the same privileges as the rest of Oregon's God-fearing couples. Ultimately, SB 1000 would be passed, but it would be missing critical protections that were considered critical, can I say again, critical to the bill. Although some hailed it as a success, this failure seemed to mean that Lonnie's case, and potentially countless others like it, would remain labeled as bias-based crime.
Really? I had no idea that wouldn't be a hate crime.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it could not technically be labeled a hate crime, which meant that far fewer people would ever even hear about the case. It's a confusing topic that I've kind of done my best to give you guys like the bullet points because it's a lot of back and forth in the legislature and different aspects of our government that I have a very cursory understanding of. I'm like, I have a podcast and a master's degree, and I feel stupid. Since then, Governor Kate Brown, our currently exiting governor, signed House Bill 3041, which clarified existing anti-discrimination protections by adding gender identity to all Oregon laws that use sexual orientation in the text of the law, which these are sometimes different things, guys. This legislation expanded on the work of the Attorney General's Hate Crimes Task Force via Senate Bill 577, which created a protected class for gender identity in Oregon in, does anyone want to guess what year?
2022.
2019. Not a lot better.
Wow. That took a while.
Yeah, took a minute. But of course, bigotry in nearly any form hasn't really gone anywhere. Detective O'Connell received a call back in 2009 questioning why he was wasting so much time on this case. And he was disgusted. And though members of the Washington County Sheriff's Department made statements to the press over the next several years, law enforcement was unable to develop any new leads. And without much evidence to go on, it hasn't been easy. As I wrote my notes, I'm stunned to learn that Lonnie was believed to be the first fatality victim of a hate crime in Washington County. Her case is included in the playing cards distributed to local jails or prisons. And she is the Five of Hearts.
Aww.
Another thing worth noting is that I have not been able to verify whether there is still a $4,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of her killer. But if you have information, please reach out to law enforcement. Obviously, we'll include that in the show notes. Keep that in mind as I share this next part of the case. I actually reached out to a media representative for Washington County, for the Sheriff's Department, as well as Crime Stoppers, who had previously offered reward money, and neither of them were able to get back to me as far as whether or not there's still a reward. In 2002, investigators revealed that two men had been seen near the crime scene near Farmington Road. They'd been driving a small to mid-size SUV. A man driving east on Farmington Road passed the vehicle as it was backing up the dirt road that Lonnie was found on. One of the men was in the vehicle, and one was waving animatedly in the glare of the headlights of the vehicle. These two individuals are believed to have been disposing of Lonnie's body. A prison informant offered a tip to law enforcement in exchange for a reduced sentence. This led them to a vehicle they believed to be used to dispose of Lonnie's body. However, this turned out to be a dead end. And that's literally it. That is all she wrote.
Wow. Well, that's disappointing.
Oh, God. Okay. I hate it when I make myself feel things. I'm a fucking monster.
Your eyes are leaky.
Yeah. It's just the part about like having somebody call the detective that's working on a cold case and say like, why are you wasting time on this?
I know, that's gross. Like, why would you go out of your way to even say that?
Like, Jesus Christ, don't you have to buy groceries and shit? Like, where are you finding the time, you know? Like,
do you think it was possibly the murderer?
I mean, who knows? I don't know. I think sometimes people want attention, and whether it's because they actually commit that crime or they're just fucking hot garbage sauce trash people. I don't know. But oh God. It makes me really sad.
It sucks.
I don't always cry when we record, by the way. This is actually kind of
concerned you do, so it's fine.
She doesn't know any better.
100%
I know,
of the
that's
time,
right.
it's fine.
Oh, yeah. She's like 1 out of 1 times that I recorded with them, she was crying. So like,
She cried.
I mean,
It's just fine. We'll work on it.
Yeah.
Next time we record, we'll make sure it happens
Exactly.
again. It's good.
Oh, good. I've set a precedent. Okay.
Aw.
Oh, so I mean, this is a really tough one to transition, but we usually do our little tarot reading, and sometimes we get like a message that is a little bit hopeful about, you know, a case like this that's unsolved, or we'll see. We'll see
Sometimes
what
we
we got.
don't.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for the tarot? right. So we just want a little deeper insight into Lonnie's story.
Do you want to cut the cards or do you want me to do it? You're like,
what
I
are
don't
you?
wanna
What do you
be-
feel like? I think she feels like she wants to do it.
Okay, I'll do it.
You're just so like connected. I feel like we got that card like 3 times already. What is happening?
Yeah.
It's the King of Pentacles in reverse.
Holy shit. This is actually, I didn't think this was going to work. I didn't think it made sense.
It works every time you think it's not going to work. The universe knows what's up.
Holy fucking shit. Okay. All right. So, can you see it? She's
Yes.
like, kind of.
Yes.
So we drew the King of Pentacles, and this deck is actually specifically one that I was gifted this Christmas. It's the Pacific Northwest Tarot deck. So it's all,
It's perfect.
yeah, it's like native plants and animals. And okay, so our keywords are security, material success, pragmatism, stability, strength, and worldly power. And I think this makes a lot of sense when we talk about the description of the card. Just wait for it.
Okay.
In many decks, this king sits on a throne and wears rich garments and a crown. Sometimes he appears with a bowl, symbol of strength, virility, and tenacity. I'm thinking like bowl, like strength, virility. That's just that. It's too weird. In a reading, he may represent an actual person, in which case he's usually a mature man who exercises worldly power and authority. We drew it in the reverse. The King of Pentacles in reverse indicates sluggishness, delays, and/or obstacles to material success. Sometimes it shows low energy or insecurity. You feel stuck, but you don't have the drive to get you out of your rut. If the card represents an actual person, he may be mercenary, coarse, dull-witted, or even corrupt.
Huh. Sounds kind of like the person who might have done it.
Or the system.
Yeah, that too.
It could be a lot of
Dull-witted.
a lot of things. Well, I mean, mercenary, Jesus. I mean, that's
What does that mean?
dark.
Wanting stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and I think of mercenary as like a mercenary in like the militant sense too.
Oh, willing
Yeah.
to hurt you for stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
I mean,
I don't
ugh.
like that.
And coarse. My God.
I mean, which would fit well with the concept of someone willing to assault based on perceived identity.
Yeah.
You're not who I thought you were in a literal biological sense, and so I'm going to beat you to death with a tire iron. That's pretty coarse. You know, opting not to take the cash, kind of all that says to me is that the cash may have been bloodstained.
I mean, that's a really valid point.
And so you don't want to wander back into the 7-Eleven
Right.
and have them be like, hey, dude, I can't help but notice that you're paying with money that's actively bloody. Sup with that?
Yeah.
So, you know, beatings, like usually if you're going to rob somebody, you do that first.
Right. That's
And then you beat them. So it doesn't sound like robbery was the motive.
yeah.
And then they're not going to take the money afterwards because it probably wasn't in the best condition.
That's
Hmm.
contaminated. Yeah.
Ugh. Well, I hate all of that. What happened to
Yeah,
this
well,
hopeful
yeah.
message that you were?
But that's what I'm saying. Is the card does kind of reflect.
Yeah.
I think
really
more
does.
the reverse side, more sort of toward what kind of mindset do you need to do something like this? You need to be pretty coarse and dehumanizing and, and mercenary, maybe not wanting the cash, but wanting something. and willing to hurt to get it, that's not far out of league from what we've been talking about.
Oh my gosh. That was so well put. Honestly.
Have a creepy ass
ass
day.
See you next Tuesday.
Perfect. Yay.
It was entirely not perfect, but good for you.
Nope, it was.
Yeah.
Imperfection is perfection.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. It was so
Thank
fun.
you
I
so
cannot wait
much.
for you to come back.
Yeah.
So, for all of you that are listening, if you have any true crime or paranormal stories that you want us to share, maybe with the whole Pacific Northwest.
Yes, we would love to read them on the pod.
Yes, we will read them out loud.
Not just in our heads.
Yes. They don't have to be from the Pacific Northwest if you would like to share. Email us at pnwhauntsandhomicides@gmail.com. It's all spelled out, no special characters. Super duper easy peasy.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Same thing as the email at pnwhauntsandhomicides, all spelled out, no special characters. Please also rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening to, and check out our stories on social media because our meme game is hot.
Agreed.
And if you agree, like Caitlin, you can also find us on Patreon and support the show.
Bitchin'.
So I had surgery yesterday, which I get it. It's stupid that I'm sitting at my desk now, but
Oh my gosh.
it's not like it's a high maintenance kind of thing. Like I'm just sitting here, might as well do something fun instead of moping.
Yeah.
Which I did all
Yeah.
day. Like I said, I'm good at that. And so yesterday I'm literally sitting in the waiting room at the hospital. They've already given, like they literally hand out Ativan as you walk in the door.
Fantastic.
Which
Where is
I'm
this?
I'm like, this is a great idea. Like you just double fisting them, So I've already have
Absolutely.
Ativan, and apparently a thing that I do when I have Ativan is I invite people on my show. So
Oh my
I
goodness.
was like sitting in the waiting room a little bit stoned, inviting people on my podcast, and I was like, technology is wonderful. Nature is returning to normal.
Did anyone say yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, stay tuned for that because we are going to have some really interesting guests coming up on your show.
For real. It'll be
I
a
cannot
surprise
wait.
for me as well, really.
No kidding. Hey, listen, sometimes good things come out of a weird medical trip.
Apparently.
No one give any of that to Caitlin. She's done enough.